house on Morrow Lane had been empty for 6 years when I bought it. The previous owner had died there. Natural causes, the realtor assured me, though she said it fast like she wanted to get past it. Old man, heart attack, found by a neighbor who noticed the mail piling up. Nothing sinister, just sad. I didn't care about any of that. The house was cheap, it had a garage, and it was 40 minutes from my ex-girlfriend Megan, which at the time felt like the most important factor of all. I should probably start with Megan. We met at a mutual friend's wedding. I was a groomsman. She was there as someone's plus one, though I never figured out whose. She had dark hair and a laugh that carried across rooms, and she found me at the bar during the reception and asked if I was having as miserable a time as she was. I said yes, even though I wasn't, because I wanted to keep talking to her. That was my first mistake, not the lie itself, which was harmless. The mistake was wanting to keep talking to her at all. We dated for 1.5 years. In the beginning, she was everything I thought I wanted. Funny, spontaneous, affectionate in a way that felt almost overwhelming, but in a good way. She'd show up at my apartment with takeout and movies. She'd text me constantly throughout the day, little updates about her life that made me feel included in it. She told me she loved me after 3 weeks, which I thought was fast, but also flattering. The problems crept in slowly. Megan didn't like being alone. That's how I'd describe it now, looking back with the clarity of distance. At the time, I just thought she was really into me, but it went beyond that. If I wanted a night to myself, she'd get quiet and withdrawn. If I made plans with friends, she'd find a reason to be upset about it later. Not the plans themselves, but something tangential. Something I'd said, or hadn't said. Something that proved I didn't care about her as much as she cared about me. She started checking my phone. I caught her doing it one night when I came out of the bathroom and she had it in her hands, scrolling through my messages. She said she was just looking for a photo I'd mentioned, but her face was wrong, tight, suspicious. I let it go. I shouldn't have. The jealousy got worse. She didn't like my female coworkers. She didn't like my friend Sam's girlfriend, who she decided was flirting with me at a barbecue. She really didn't like my ex from college, who I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, but who still existed somewhere in the world, which apparently was enough. Megan wanted to know everything about that relationship, how long it lasted, why it ended, whether I'd loved her. She asked to see pictures, then got angry when I couldn't find any. She accused me of hiding them, of still being hung up on someone I dated nearly a decade ago. I tried to reassure her. I tried to be patient. But the more I gave, the more she wanted. And eventually I realized that nothing would ever be enough. There was a hole in Megan that no amount of attention or affection could fill. She would take and take until there was nothing left of me, and she'd still be empty. I broke up with her in March. It was a Sunday afternoon. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say, had the whole speech planned out. She didn't let me finish it. She started crying immediately, not soft, dignified tears, but wailing, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. She grabbed my hands and begged me not to do this. She said she'd change. She said she couldn't live without me. She said if I left her, she didn't know what she'd do. That last part sounded like a threat, but I told myself it wasn't. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. I stayed firm. I told her it was over, that I was sorry, that I hoped she'd find someone who could give her what she needed. She left. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The first incident happened 2 weeks later. I came home from work to find my apartment door unlocked. I was sure I'd locked it that morning. I always did. But there it was, slightly ajar. I pushed it open slowly, half expecting to find a burglar inside. The apartment was empty. Nothing was missing. Nothing was out of place. But something felt wrong. The air was different, like someone had been there recently. I checked every room, every closet. Nothing. I convinced myself I'd forgotten to lock the door. It happens. People forget things. Then the text started. The first one came from Megan's number, which I hadn't blocked because I didn't think I needed to. It said, "I miss you. Can we talk?" I didn't respond. The next one came the following night. "I drove by your apartment today. Your light was on. Were you alone?" I blocked her number. New texts came from numbers I didn't recognize. Sometimes they were loving. "I think about you every day. I know you still love me." And sometimes they were angry. "You think you can just throw me away? You think there are no consequences?" Asterisk. I blocked each new number as it appeared. They kept coming. I went to the police after the 5th number. The officer who took my report was a woman in her 50s with a bored expression. She wrote down what I told her, asked if Megan had made any explicit threats. "She said there would be consequences," I said. "Consequences for what?" "For breaking up with her. For leaving her." The officer nodded slowly. "Has she threatened violence? Threatened to harm you or anyone else?" "Not exactly. But, sir, I understand this is upsetting, but unless she makes a direct threat, there's not much we can do. You can try for a restraining order, but you'll need more evidence." I asked what kind of evidence. "Documentation. Keep records of everything she sends. If she shows up at your home or workplace, that's harassment. If she damages your property, that's destruction of property. Build a case." I thanked her and left. I started keeping a log. The texts continued through April and into May. Megan never made a direct threat. She was too smart for that. But the tone shifted. The loving messages stopped. Now it was all resentment and blame. "You ruined my life. I gave you everything and you threw it away. You'll regret this. I promise you that." I saved every message. I documented every new number. I was building my case just like the officer said. Then things escalated. My car was keyed one night while parked outside my building. Long, deep scratches along both sides, spelling out a word I'll let you guess. I filed a police report. No witnesses, no cameras, nothing they could do. A week later, I got a call from my boss asking if everything was okay. Someone had been calling the office, claiming to be my ex-girlfriend, saying I'd stolen money from her and she was considering pressing charges. My boss didn't believe it. He knew me, knew my work ethic. But he was concerned. I told him about Megan, about the stalking, the harassment. He was sympathetic, but also clearly uncomfortable. He said to let him know if there was anything he could do. There wasn't. The calls to my office continued. Different claims each time. I'd hit her. I'd threatened her. I'd given her an STD. All lies, but the kind of lies that stick. I could see my coworkers looking at me differently, whispering when I walked by. I started looking for a new job. I started looking for a new place to live. That's how I found the house on Morrow Lane. The house was perfect in the way that something can only be perfect when you're desperate. It was small, a 2-bedroom ranch with a half-finished basement and a backyard that backed up to woods. The paint was peeling and the kitchen hadn't been updated since the 80s, but it was mine. Megan didn't know about it. Nobody did, except the realtor and the bank. I moved in on a Saturday in June. I didn't tell my friends my new address. I didn't update my information with my job. I'd given notice anyway. Found something new in a town 30 minutes further away. I deleted my social media accounts. I got a new phone number. I was starting over. Clean slate. For a while it worked. The texts stopped, or at least stopped reaching me. I went to my new job, came home to my quiet house, ate dinner in front of the TV like a normal person. I adopted a dog from the shelter, a mutt named Hank, who was skittish around loud noises but loyal as hell. He slept at the foot of my bed and barked at squirrels and made the house feel less empty. I started to relax, started to believe that maybe Megan had given up, found someone new to fixate on. Maybe she'd gotten help. 3 months passed, then 4. Then, in October, I came home to find my front door unlocked. I stood on the porch for a long time, staring at that door. It was cracked open maybe an inch, just like my apartment door had been back in March. Hank was inside. I could hear him barking. Not his normal excited bark, but something higher, more frantic. I should have called the police. I know that now. But I was angry. Angry that she'd found me. Angry that she was still doing this. Angry that I couldn't just live my life without looking over my shoulder. I pushed the door open and went inside. The house was trashed. Not destroyed exactly, but violated. Cushions pulled off the couch, drawers opened, cabinets hanging wide. In the kitchen, every dish I owned was stacked in a tower on the counter, balanced precariously, like someone had spent hours getting it just right. Hank was in the bedroom, cowering under the bed. I had to coax him out with treats, and even then he wouldn't stop shaking. I searched the house. Empty. Whoever had been there was gone. On my bed, laid out neatly on the pillow, was a photograph. Me, walking into my new job, taken from across the street. On the back, in handwriting I knew too well, "Found you." I called the police. A different officer this time, a young guy who seemed more interested than the woman in the city had been. He took pictures of the damage, bagged the photograph as evidence, asked me questions about Megan. I told him everything. The texts, the calls to my old job, the keyed car. "Do you have documentation?" he asked. I gave him my log. Months of entries, dates and times and screenshots printed out and organized in a folder. I'd been thorough. He looked impressed, or at least less bored than I expected. "This is good," he said. "This might be enough for a restraining order." I filed for one the next week. The hearing was scheduled for November. In the meantime, I installed cameras, motion-activated lights, new locks on every door and window. I bought a gun, a handgun, something small that I could keep in my nightstand. I took a safety course, went to the range twice a week. I wasn't going to be caught helpless. Megan's lawyer fought the restraining order. She claimed I was the one harassing her, that I'd been contacting her through fake numbers, that she was terrified of me. She had her own log, her own evidence. Texts she claimed I'd sent, emails from addresses she said were mine. I'd never sent any of it. I hadn't contacted her since the breakup. The judge looked at both cases. I could see him weighing them, trying to figure out who was telling the truth. In the end, he granted the restraining order. Megan was to stay at least 500 feet from me, my home, and my workplace. She couldn't contact me directly or through third parties. Any violation would result in arrest. I watched her face when the judge announced it. She didn't look angry. She didn't look sad. She looked patient, like this was just a minor setback. For 2 months, nothing happened. The restraining order seemed to be working. No more texts, no more break-ins. My cameras captured nothing but deer and the occasional raccoon. Hank stopped flinching at shadows. I started sleeping through the night. I let myself hope. Then, 3 days before Christmas, my mother called. "Kevin, there's someone here looking for you."
My mother lived 2 hours away, in the house I'd grown up in. She was 74 and lived alone since my father had passed. I talked to her once a week, visited once a month.
"Who?" I asked, though I already knew. "A woman. She says she's a friend of yours. Said she wanted to drop off a Christmas present but lost your new address." My blood went cold. "Mom, don't tell her anything. Don't let her in." "What? Kevin, what's going on?" "Just, please, don't give her any information. Tell her you'll pass along a message." I heard my mother relay this to someone in the background. A pause. Then my mother's voice again, confused. She left, just walked back to her car and drove away. "Kevin, who was that?" I told her about Megan. All of it. The stalking, the restraining order, everything. My mother listened in silence. When I finished, she said, "You should have told me sooner. I didn't want to worry you. I'm your mother. Worrying about you is my job." I drove to her house that night, checked all her locks, made sure her doors were solid. I offered to install cameras, but she refused. Said she wasn't going to live her life in fear because of some troubled young woman. I stayed with her for Christmas. It was the first time I'd slept away from the house on Morrow Lane since I'd moved in. Hank came with me. He and my mother's ancient cat established an uneasy truce. When I got home 2 days later, everything was exactly as I'd left it. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt watched. January passed. February. The cameras captured nothing. The silence stretched on. I got a new girlfriend. Her name was Dana, and she was nothing like Megan. Calm where Megan had been volatile. Secure where Megan had been suspicious. She worked as a librarian at the county library and had a dry sense of humor that snuck up on you. We met through a dating app. I'd been hesitant to try, given everything, but loneliness is its own kind of poison. I told Dana about Megan on our 3rd date. I wanted her to know what she might be getting into. She listened without interrupting, asked a few clarifying questions, then said, "That sounds like it was really hard." "It's still kind of ongoing," I admitted. She violated the restraining order once, showing up at my mom's place. But it's been quiet since then. Dana nodded. I appreciate you telling me. If anything happens, I want to know. I promised I'd keep her in the loop. For a while, things were good. Dana and I saw each other twice a week. She met Hank and declared him perfectly adequate, which from her was high praise. She came to my house a few times, though she preferred her apartment in town. Said my place was too isolated, too far from everything. She wasn't wrong. That was the point. In March, almost exactly a year after I'd broken up with Megan, Dana and I were at my place watching a movie when Hank started barking. Not his normal bark, that high, frantic sound I'd only heard once before. I muted the TV. "Stay here," I told Dana. "What's wrong?" "Probably nothing. Just let me check." I got my gun from the nightstand and moved through the house. The motion lights hadn't gone off. I could see through the windows that the yard was dark. But Hank was at the back door, growling now, hackles raised. I opened the door and stepped onto the back porch. The woods behind my house were dark, just shapes against shapes. I couldn't see anything out of place. Couldn't hear anything except Hank's growling and the wind in the trees. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "She seems nice." I ran back inside and grabbed Dana. "We're leaving. Now." "What?" "Kevin, what's happening?" "She's here. Megan's here. We need to go." Dana didn't argue. We got in my car, Hank too, and I drove to the police station. I showed them the text, told them about Hank's behavior, asked them to send someone to check the property. They did. Found nothing. No sign anyone had been there. Could have been sent from anywhere, the officer said. No way to prove she was actually on your property. She was watching us. She knew I was with someone. The officer shrugged. Maybe she drove by, saw the cars. My house is half a mile off the road. Another shrug. I don't know what to tell you, sir. Without evidence, there's nothing we can do. Dana broke up with me a week later. She said it wasn't about the danger, though I knew it was. She said she just didn't think we were right for each other. She said she hoped I understood. I did. I didn't blame her. But I was also angry. Not at her, but at the situation. At Megan. At the fact that even now, a year later, she was still controlling my life. I went back to living alone. Back to watching the cameras, checking the locks, sleeping with a gun beside my bed. Hank was my only company. He seemed to understand. He stayed close, slept with his head on my feet, growled at sounds I couldn't hear. In April, my mother had a stroke. It was minor. She'd be okay, the doctor said, but she needed help. She couldn't live alone anymore. My sister lived in California, too far to help with daily care. That left me. I moved my mother into the house on Morrow Lane, gave her the master bedroom, took the smaller one for myself. She complained about being a burden. I told her to shut up in the kindest way I could. Having her there changed things. The house felt less like a bunker and more like a home. My mother filled it with noise, the TV on during the day, phone calls with her friends, complaints about my cooking. Hank adored her, and the feeling was mutual. I still watched the cameras, still checked the locks. But I started to relax again. Just a little. That was a mistake. It happened on a Saturday night in May. I'd been at the store, picking up groceries. I was gone maybe 45 minutes. When I pulled into the driveway, all the lights in the house were off. That was wrong. My mother never turned off the lights before 10. Said she couldn't see well enough in the dark. It was barely 8. I got out of the car slowly, left the groceries, moved toward the front door with my hand on the gun in my waistband. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open. The house was silent. No TV, no hum of the refrigerator, nothing. Mom? No answer. I found her in the living room. She was in her chair, the one she always sat in to watch her shows. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing. There was blood, so much blood, pooling beneath her, soaking into the carpet. Her throat had been cut, deep, deliberate. She was still holding the TV remote. Hank was on the floor beside her. He wasn't moving either. I don't remember calling 911. I don't remember the police arriving, or the paramedics, or any of it. My next clear memory is sitting on my front porch with a blanket around my shoulders, watching them carry my mother out in a black bag. A detective was talking to me, asking questions. I answered them on autopilot. Do you know who might have done this? Yes. Who? My ex-girlfriend, Megan Holt. I have a restraining order against her. She's been stalking me for over a year. The detective wrote it down. They found Megan the next day at her apartment in the city. She had an alibi. She'd been at a friend's birthday party with 20 witnesses. She cried when they told her about my mother. Said she was devastated. Said she hoped I was okay. They couldn't arrest her. No evidence. The timeline didn't work. She had alibis, plural. She'd been seen by multiple people across the city in the hours before and after my mother's murder. But I knew it was her, even if she hadn't held the knife herself. She'd found someone to do it for her, or she'd planned it so carefully that her alibi was airtight. Megan called me the day after the funeral. My number had changed again, but somehow she had it. I'm so sorry for your loss, she said. Her voice was soft, sincere. I know how much your mother meant to you. You did this. Kevin, that's a terrible thing to say. I was at a party. You know that. You had someone do it. I don't know how, but I know it was you. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, be careful, Kevin. Grief makes people say things they shouldn't. She hung up. The police investigated for 6 months. They interviewed Megan multiple times, searched her apartment, her car, her phone. They found nothing linking her to the murder. They looked into her friends, her acquaintances, anyone who might have done it on her behalf. Dead ends. The case went cold. I sold the house on Morrow Lane. I couldn't stay there. Couldn't look at that living room without seeing my mother. I moved again. Further this time. A different state entirely. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Changed my name. Changed everything. It's been 3 years now. 3 years since my mother's death. 3 years since I became someone else. I work remotely, programming contracts that I pick up online. I live in a cabin in the mountains, no neighbors for miles. I have a new dog, another mutt from a shelter, this one named Bear. I keep to myself. I order groceries online. The delivery guy is the only person I see most weeks. I thought for a while that I was finally safe, that Megan had won, in a way, driven me out of my life, away from everyone I knew, but that the victory had been enough, that she'd moved on. Then, 2 weeks ago, I found a photograph in my mailbox. It was me, walking bare on the trail behind my cabin, shot from a distance with a telephoto lens. On the back, in handwriting I knew too well, "Miss me?" I spent the next 3 days in a haze. I didn't sleep, barely ate. I sat in my cabin with all the lights off and every curtain drawn, watching the tree line through the gap in the blinds. She'd found me. After 3 years, and a new name and a new state, she'd found me. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? Someone left a photograph in my mailbox. They'd file a report and do nothing, just like before. The restraining order was useless here. I didn't even know if it was valid across state lines, and it obviously wasn't stopping her anyway. I thought about running again. Another new place, another new name. But I was tired. So tired of running, of hiding, of building a life only to watch it get torn down. I thought about killing myself. I'm not proud of that, but it's the truth. I stood in my kitchen with Bear at my feet and thought about how easy it would be, how peaceful. No more looking over my shoulder. No more waiting for the next photograph, the next violation, the next death. But then I thought about my mother, about what she'd say if she knew I was giving up, about what Megan would think, that she'd finally won, completely and totally. I put down the knife and made a different decision. It took me 2 months to find her. I'd learned a few things over the years about tracking people down. Megan had taught me in a way, shown me how easy it was to find someone who didn't want to be found. I used the same techniques against her. Public records, social media searches under different names, reverse image lookups. I hired a private investigator, paid cash, used a burner phone to communicate. Megan had changed too. New job, new city. She'd moved south to a town in Georgia. She worked at a real estate office, had a new boyfriend, seemed to be living a normal life. The investigator sent me pictures. Megan getting coffee, Megan at the gym, Megan laughing with friends at a restaurant. She looked happy, settled, like she'd moved on. But I knew better. I drove to Georgia. It took 2 days. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. There wasn't anyone to tell. I left Bear with a neighbor, told him I'd be back in a week. I found Megan's apartment, a second-floor unit in a complex that looked new, all beige stucco and identical balconies. I watched it for 3 days, learning her routine. She left for work at 8, came home at 6. Sometimes her boyfriend stayed over, sometimes he didn't. On the 4th night, he didn't. I waited until 2 in the morning. Then I picked the lock on her front door and let myself in. The apartment was dark and quiet. I moved through it slowly, stepping around furniture, avoiding the creaky spots on the floor. I could hear her breathing in the bedroom, slow, even, asleep. I pushed open the bedroom door. She was lying on her back, one arm thrown over her head. She looked peaceful, innocent, almost, like she'd never hurt anyone in her life. I stood there for a long time watching her sleep. I thought about all the things she'd done, the harassment, the break-ins, the destruction of my life. My mother, bleeding out in her favorite chair. Hank, who'd never hurt anyone, lying still on the floor beside her. I thought about what I was about to do and whether I could live with it. Then I thought about the photograph in my mailbox and knew I couldn't live without it. I crossed the room in 3 steps. Her eyes flew open just as I reached the bed. She must have sensed me somehow, must have felt the shift in the air. She opened her mouth to scream. I didn't give her the chance. I won't describe what I did. I'm not proud of it, and I'm not writing this to brag. I'm writing this because I need to get it out, need to put it somewhere other than my own head. I will say this. It took longer than I expected. Megan fought. She was strong, stronger than she looked. She clawed at my face, my arms. She managed to scream once, briefly, before I stopped her. When it was over, I sat on the edge of her bed and looked at what I'd done. She was unrecognizable. That's the only way I can describe it. I'd done things I didn't know I was capable of. Things that, if I'm being honest, I'd been fantasizing about for years without admitting it to myself. I felt empty. Not satisfied. Not relieved. Just empty. Like I'd poured everything I had into that moment, and now there was nothing left. I cleaned up as best I could. I took a shower in her bathroom, put my bloody clothes in a trash bag. I wiped down every surface I'd touched. I left through the back door, the same way I'd come in, and walked half a mile to where I'd parked my car. I drove through the night, straight back to my cabin, stopping only for gas. When I got home, Bear was waiting on the porch, tail wagging. The neighbor had let him out like I'd asked. I burned my clothes in the fire pit behind the cabin. I scrubbed myself raw in the shower. Then I went to bed and slept for 14 hours straight. When I woke up, I checked the news. It took 2 days for them to find her. Her boyfriend had gotten worried when she didn't show up for a date, went to check on her. He found her in the bedroom. The article didn't give details, just said she'd been the victim of apparent homicidal violence. No suspects, no witnesses, no leads. That was 6 weeks ago. I keep waiting for the knock on the door, for the detective with questions, for the warrant, for the handcuffs. It hasn't come. Either I was careful enough, or I was lucky enough. Maybe both. I should feel guilty. I know that. I killed someone, not in self-defense, not in the heat of the moment, but deliberately, methodically. I drove 2 days to do it. I planned it. I executed it. But when I try to summon guilt, all I feel is relief. Megan is gone. She can't hurt me anymore. She can't hurt anyone anymore. The world is better off without her in it. Is that what killers tell themselves? Is that how they justify it? I don't know. Maybe. But I also know what Megan did to my mother. I know what she did to my dog. I know what she would have kept doing, forever. Because people like her don't stop. They can't. It's not in their nature. I stopped her. There's one more thing I should mention. After I got back from Georgia, I went through my mail. There was a stack of it waiting. Bills, junk, the usual. At the bottom of the pile was an envelope with no return address. Inside was another photograph. Me, getting out of my car after driving back from Georgia. The timestamp in the corner showed the date and time, 2 hours after I'd returned. On the back, in handwriting I'd never seen before, she told me about you. Now it's my turn. I stared at that photograph for a long time. Then I went inside, loaded my gun, and started planning. Megan might be dead, but whatever sickness she had, she'd passed it on. Maybe to her boyfriend, maybe to a friend, maybe to someone I'll never see coming. It doesn't matter. I'm done running. I'm done hiding. Whoever's out there, whoever thinks they can pick up where Megan left off, they're going to find out that I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. That the man who ran and hid and begged the police for help is gone. I killed Megan with my bare hands. I watched the life leave her eyes. And the truth is, in that moment, I felt more alive than I had in years. If someone else wants to take her place, I'll be waiting. Bear is asleep by the fire. My gun is on the table beside me. The cabin is dark and quiet, and outside the wind is picking up, shaking the trees. I'm not afraid anymore. That's the strangest part of all this. After everything, the stalking, the harassment, the murder of my mother, the murder I committed, I'm not afraid. I'm ready. Let them come. They came. There were 2 of them. A man and a woman, both in their 20s. I never learned their names. They broke in through the back door in the middle of the night, same way I'd gotten into Megan's apartment. They weren't expecting me to be awake. They weren't expecting the motion sensors I'd installed, the silent alarm that woke me 30 seconds before they got through the lock. They definitely weren't expecting me to be standing in the hallway with a shotgun. The man went down first. The woman tried to run. She didn't make it to the door. I buried them in the woods behind the cabin, half a mile in, under a rock formation that nobody ever visits. It took me all night. Bear watched from the tree line, tail between his legs. I don't know if there are more. I don't know if this ends with 2 or 3 or 10. I don't know if Megan built a whole network of people as broken as she was, or if I just got unlucky and there were a couple of true believers who took her death personally. What I know is this: I'm still here. I'm still alive. And anyone who comes for me is going to end up in those woods, under that rock formation, keeping each other company in the dark. Some people would call what I've done evil. Maybe they're right. Maybe I've become the thing I was running from. But here's what those people don't understand. There's no such thing as clean hands in a situation like this. You can be a victim, or you can be a survivor. You can wait for the system to protect you. The police, the courts, the restraining orders that aren't worth the paper they're printed on. Or you can protect yourself. I made my choice. I live alone in the mountains with my dog. I work on my computer, buy groceries online, see almost no one. I sleep with a gun under my pillow and a shotgun by the door. I've killed 3 people and buried 2 of them with my own hands. This is my life now. I don't expect anyone to feel sorry for me. I don't need anyone to understand. All I need is to wake up tomorrow and the day after and the day after that, to walk bare on the trail behind my cabin, to sit on my porch and watch the sun set over the mountains. That's all anyone needs, really. The chance to keep going. Megan tried to take that from me. She failed. Whoever's next will fail too. I'll make sure of it.